So in almost every line of business, suppliers offer their customers some sort of a trade discount. And they usually do this so that the customers can pay the suppliers back a little bit early. Right, so let's suppose that you have some suppliers and they're in China. And let's suppose that you are in the business of, let's say, selling rugs and carpets here in the USA. And so what happens is that your suppliers in China send you all these carpets and rugs, which come to you here in the US. You sell them to your customers, and then you pay your suppliers back, let's suppose, in roughly 40 days. And the reason why you may have this sort of an arrangement with your suppliers, say that, look, I'm going to pay you back in 40 days, is because you're hoping that during this time, you'll sell some carpets and rugs here in the US and use the proceeds from those sales to pay back your suppliers. Okay, now your suppliers may not like this because, let's face it, they have to wait 40 days. And so they may come around and say that, look, if you pay us for all these purchases in 10 days or less, we will give you a 2% trade discount, which basically means that if you are buying, let's suppose, say $10,000 worth of material from us, it'll only cost you $9,800, right? So 2% less if you pay us in 10 days or less. Now, you at first may like the idea of getting this 2% trade discount, but because let's face it, it's going to reduce your costs. However, the problem is that you may not have the funds to do this because your customers haven't paid you up until then. And so there's a dilemma. Should you take this 2% discount? Can you take this 2% discount? Well, actually, one of the questions that I pose to my students is this, that let's suppose you can actually get some sort of external financing. Like maybe you can go to a bank and say, look, can you give me like a revolving line of credit? And you can maybe use the proceeds from that to take the trade discount while you're waiting for your customers to pay you. And so this then is the specific question that I'm going to pose to you, which I also pose to my students. Would you specifically go to a bank and get a revolving line of credit, say at 12% APR, in order to get 2% trade discounts from your suppliers? Now, if you're like most of my students, the look that you have on your face is somewhat like this right now, where you are saying, are you seriously asking me to borrow at 12% so that I can get 2% trade discounts? That sounds like a bad deal. Why would I ever want to borrow at such a high rate just to get 2% off of my supplies? And so you are probably saying, no, I wouldn't do this. Well, I'm here to show you that there's a little bit of math which you can do in order to figure out which is the right choice to make. To illustrate, let's suppose that you go to your suppliers and say, guys, here we are today. I would like $1,000 worth of goods today, and I am going to pay you back 40 days later. So after the 40 days, I'm going to pay you the full $1,000. Now your suppliers might say, okay, that's fine, but you know what? If you actually pay us in 10 days or less, then at the 10th day, you would only need to pay us $980 because we are going to give you a 2% trade discount. Now this $980 you'd like to pay for a $1,000 purchase, but the problem is you don't have the $980, so you say, guys, you know what? I am going to wait an extra 30 days and pay you the full $1,000. Now here's the thing. When the 10th day arrives and your suppliers ask you for $980, because you don't have the $980, you say, guys, I'm going to wait, but that is as if you're telling your suppliers, look, let me keep that $980 in my pocket right now. I mean, you technically don't have it, but it is as if you're borrowing from them. And so this is the punchline. On the 10th day, when you are approached by your supplier saying, give us the $980, and you say, no, I don't have it, it is as if you are borrowing this $980, keeping it for an extra 30 days, and for the privilege of keeping this money in your pocket for the extra 30 days, you are paying $20 extra. So this is like paying a $20 interest expense, quote unquote interest expense, on a $980 loan, which if you do the math comes out to about 2.0408%. And mind you, this is the interest rate, quote unquote interest rate, that you're paying on this 30-day loan. After this 30-day period is over, this cycle is going to repeat and then repeat. So if somebody asks you, what effectively is the rate that you're paying for the entire year, you would actually need to multiply this by 365 and divided by 30, where this is the 30 that we're talking about here, because this is the number of 30-day intervals that exist during the entire 1 year. If you do this math, you might be surprised to learn that the APR, or the annual rate that you're paying on this quote-unquote borrowing from your suppliers, is about 24.83%. That is right. By not taking a measly 2% trade discount from your suppliers during the entire year, you are effectively borrowing from them, and for the privilege of that borrowing, you are effectively paying a cost on that borrowing of 24.83%. So the moral of the story here is this: if you have an alternative source of financing which is similar, in other words, it's short-term, like a revolving line of credit that you can get from your bank, and if that is available at something like 12%, 12% is less than 24.83%, you're much better off getting a 12% revolving line of credit and using the proceeds from that to take the 2% trade discount, because if you don't do that, that for the entire borrowing that you're doing from your suppliers, you're paying a much higher cost of borrowing. So the moral of the story here is that when you don't take trade discounts, you are effectively borrowing from your suppliers, and if there's a cheaper source of financing or a cheaper lender that is available to you, you might as well borrow from that guy and not borrow from your suppliers by not taking the trade discounts.